Hello, welcome to Artistic Spirit, your place for art, mental health, and spirituality. And today we have a very special guest, Raven McChesney, who is an artist, spiritual mentor, coach, and aerialist. Thank you so much for being here today. So I'll give you some background. I started following Raven on Instagram 4 years ago and wanted to work with her for about a year and a half. And I really felt like it was something I wanted so much. And I didn't know how it was going to happen. But I jumped at the chance when she opened the doors to her online course, Spiritgram, and later as a student in her group coaching program, Third Eye Academy. I've learned so much from her and had so many self-spiritual transformations and realizations through working with her. So I'd love to just welcome her, and I hope everyone gets what I got out of all of my experiences with her.
Thank you so much, Katie. I'm so happy to be here. You are always a joy. I'm so excited to talk to your audience, get to know what you do and help them any way I can. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Thanks. I'd like to start off by talking about your social media presence. How do you protect your energy on social media and preserve it in a way that you are able to show up consistently?
Yeah, so social media, I think, is one of those things that as a society, we're all trying to navigate because it's still so new, but it's changing rapidly. And we are all very much affected by it. You know, everyone now is almost required in a way to have some type of social media presence. So I think it's really important to when it comes to protecting your energy, to really separate yourself from what you're doing, right? Because that gives you grace to have a learning curve. And I think people instantly will relate how they're doing online to how they're doing in life. Like, oh, people don't like it, this isn't good. Or, you know, people love it, then I'm doing great. And it's really important to maintain your own emotions, like have a very strong sense of who you are, and the way that the world reacts to you can't be the dictating factor of why you're showing up or why you're doing it. Because I know for me, I have multiple Instagram pages even, and I'll take one piece of content and put it on one and it'll do amazing, and I'll put that same piece of content on another one and it will bottom out, like it'll be crickets. And so what that shows me is it's never a reflection of how well I'm doing. It's just a reflection of, am I learning the skills needed to understand the audience that I'm trying to reach, and am I putting out content that is beneficial to them, right? And have I created my account in a way that Instagram knows, or Twitter, whoever it is, knows who it is I'm trying to reach? Because that's a big thing, is understanding how the platform works. And so I'd say the biggest thing to protecting your energy is to give yourself the grace of having a learning curve. Like, you might post things and not understand it, the platform. Don't let that really interfere with how you view yourself, but you can, learn it as you go. Like, oh, my audience really loves this kind of content, so let me make more of that, and how can I make that in a way that shows off what I'm creating or what I'm trying to give to this planet. And viewing it from those angles helps you show up as yourself without being so, pulled by the whirlwind that is the feelings that come with being on social media. So hopefully that answered it.
Yeah. And I think something that you really taught me, that I recently went to a creator conference and it was online, and they said the number one thing you need to do if you want to actually achieve growth is to have a why. And I think it was actually in one of your programs where I really went deep into my why, and so much of it, I think my highest performing content was on suicide prevention posts. And that was something that I never would have thought about doing if I didn't realize how important it was to me to kind of speak to someone who was in a place that I was there and I felt like there was no hope, and to remind someone that in that space there's hope. So that's something that I definitely learned from you about your why, and that changed the content I put out.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's actually a really big part of my program, and something that a lot of really well trained professional life coaches, spiritual coaches do, is to make sure that motivation is there, right? And so when we ask for motivation, a lot of people say, "Oh, I want to live this life and I want to impact these people and have, and there's very surface level whys, and taking the time to uncover why exactly you're showing up, why you're putting this work out, what this work means to you, that motivates you above all else. Because when, like with anything, there's going to be ups and downs. You're going to have things that you're really good at. You're going to have things that you're going to struggle with. And that why is going to be the fuel that keeps you going. And you have to make that strong, and that's what people resonate with. They resonate with the why more than they are the actual content, because they can feel that energy. And I feel like especially with social media or producing anything, is allowing it to be a movement, right? Not just a means to an end, not just, a quick post just to keep the post going, but instead to have a deep, deep why, because that will make people reach for things that they never thought that they would ever reach for, or create things they never thought they could reach for, because they have that anchor, that root that's really deep inside of them. And so I think that's really, really powerful. So I'm really glad you had that experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think something that you're really unique in, I feel like you kind of like have this energy where you like unlock things, kind of like a key in a lock, and you kind of like have this, I'm thinking of your charms, like the key. I recently saw you posted the key, and I really like feel like you have that energy where you unlock things for people. So I really thought about like the questions today, and thought about what are the people listening, like what would they need to unlock. So I really hope that anyone listening is very open to what they can hear today, whether it be showing up on social media, showing up in your life, like showing up for yourself even, just like the best way to kind of like unlock your potential in that area. So something that really makes me think of unlocking potential, I saw you do so much like in spiritual coaching, and it's all amazing work. And then you also have your art, and it's amazing art. And then all of a sudden you started doing aerials, and I was like, now she's amazing with aerials. So I just was wondering, what are some spiritual lessons, or like one spiritual lesson that you've learned through practicing aerials and
I
performing?
love this question so much. And because everything teaches us, everything that we do. And when it comes to doing different things and having different avenues of talent, I think it's important for people to realize that, there's not some special person out there. Like, I'm not any more special than anyone around me. It's really allowing yourself to play in the realms that you feel pulled to, right? Even if you have a simple desire, a lot of people are like, am I going to be good at it? And they don't want to try it until they know for sure that they're going to be good at it. And then when they try it, they're not good at it, because no one is when you first try something. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, oh, it wasn't for me. But, I think one of the keys to unlocking potential is to really just allow yourself to do whatever you feel would be fun, and to do it without judgment, and saving that judgment for constructive purposes. Like when I'm preparing for a performance with aerials, that's when I'll start being nitty gritty of, oh, you need to bend your toes here. You need to make sure your legs are straight. But to answer your question though, of the biggest spiritual lesson I've learned, it's actually that every person that comes in to do aerials is really, really good at something and is really bad at something else. Every single person, right? I mean, and I always tell new students this too, as their first class, because they'll see someone else who's excelling. They're like pulling themselves up. So someone could have strength and they're able to, pull themselves up into power positions. Someone else has bravery. So they're willing to try those tricks that are really sketchy. That I'm not one of those people. It takes me a while to get there. And then you have people that are very graceful. And I think that's one of my traits with aerials, is being graceful and kind of a dance format, and being able to really apply dance to it. And then you have people that have great presence with performance, and they go out and they connect with the audience right away. And, they're just able to captivate an audience regardless of whatever their routine is. And so every person has this area of, extraordinary capability. And then everyone else has an area that, they're really going to struggle with. And that's actually really the blessing, because it's in the places that we have to work the hardest that we have the most satisfaction when it works out. So for me, it's really taught me that you can't really compare yourself to where anyone else is at, because we all have a hand of cards, and we all have good cards in our hand, and we all have cards that we have to learn how to work with in a new way. And so it's really taken out any ideas of competition or comparison. And so that's been my biggest lesson in aerials spiritually so far.
Yeah, I think that's so beautiful too. And I follow a lot of authors on Twitter, and I think for so many of us, like there's so many people in that space. And like when you like really go to someone's page, you really see how like what they're doing is unique in like their own right. And I think like for people who are just starting out, they might feel like it's so saturated, and like how do I like find my way in this place that it seems like everyone's doing. But like that's just not true. Like everyone has their own personality and like their own, like you said, like assets to kind of like bring to the world and to birth, especially in like the process of creation for like any creator out there. So thank you for sharing that lesson.
Yeah. And
um,
something I want to say about what you were saying with the saturation is that we have to remember too, with social media, it's tailored, it's an algorithm. So if you do a certain type of content, it naturally is going to push you into the bubbles of people that do that content. And it feels like it's so saturated. But when you look at the world, there's billions of people on this planet, billions. And when you really compare how many authors or artists or, social media influencers, whatever it is, it's really not that saturated. The difference is that it's just all those people are in one little bubble. So you're getting fed all of their content, and everyone's seeing other content that's just like theirs. And so if you ever do feel like that, if someone listening, and I know for me, I've had this experience myself, is it's so important to consciously move out of your bubble on social media and try and connect with people that do different things, so that you're not always being fed that, because that can hinder sometimes your progress or wanting to put yourself out there. But yeah, you never know how long it took someone to get where they are, or how many bad pages they had to write before they had a successful, even one successful book. They might have published 3 or 4 before this and nothing, and so yeah, it's very important to honor your own progress and your own process. So I just want to throw that in there, because I think that's a big thing that a lot of people feel when they first start trying to show up, is like, oh, it's already done. Like, no, there's definitely enough people out there that need your work.
Yeah, and it really makes me think of, I was like following a lot of like Bookstagram accounts, because I heard someone say like if you feel like you're not happy with like your feed, like if it's like impacting your mental health, like unfollow people and like follow people who like make you happy. So that, for me, that was just like books, and my whole timeline was books, and I started thinking like, wow, like everyone's like showing books, and I think I posted a picture with a book and like it got like no engagement, because none of my followers like ever see books on the thing, and they're like, why would someone post a picture of a book? But yeah, like I didn't understand it at the time, but now that you say it, like, yeah, like we really like we cater to ourselves with like our decisions and our choices. And I think it's really important that we recognize who we follow to be a choice and who we unfollow to be a choice, and that these decisions really shape how we see the world, and we have power in that.
Oh, I love that. The power of decision. That's a big one.
Yeah, if you'd like to talk a little bit about that. Also, what can you share about goal setting for listeners going into the new year? And also if you can tie it into like the power of decisions.
Yeah, I mean, that is basically what goal setting is. It's decisions. And it's so funny to this morning. I know you know this. I don't know how, if your audience ever experiences life like this, but when I see animals or I get a message from spirit, I usually take it as very high information for me to move forward. And today outside, I saw a hawk that was just circling around above me. And at the moment I was thinking about, the hawk is an energy of going after what you want. really. I mean, Hawk sees so clearly, and it's able to predict, the momentum and the speed at which it needs to swoop to pick up what it's going after. And a lot of people don't take the time to really digest their desires. And this is kind of going back to the why exercise that you did in Third Eye Academy is, first you want to know your why. Like, why do you want more, and I mean, well, let's say actually first start off with making a desires list. If you're trying to approach the new year and you want it to be better and different than any of the years prior, just making a list of every single possible thing you can think of that you want to experience in this life is the start of it. Does that mean you need to act on every single thing? Of course not. But it does start to open up those parts of your brain and those parts of your being that maybe you haven't allowed to breathe for a while. And it could be numerous things that keep you from dreaming. It could be, fear of failure. Maybe in the past you've sabotaged things, or people, maybe they've sabotaged things, or they got distracted, or, procrastinated on it, or they just couldn't go through with it. So often people don't want to look at their desires because it makes them feel bad. It brings up all this stuff from the past. And that's something that has to be worked through, and setting goals is allowing yourself to dream is how it starts. And then that's when the why comes in. And why do you want these things? Why? Like, what purpose is it? And the exercise we did in Third Eye Academy is the 7 layers of why. So it's like, I want blank because blank. And then you take that why, and you make that, I want this because of this. So you just keep going into the why, like, why do you want that why? Why do you want that why? And you want to get to the place where you feel it so deep in your core and your emotions that becomes the fuel. And so after that is really setting those goals. It's really taking a step back and being like, which goals on here felt the most powerful to me? Which ones had the most powerful why on here? What are things that I want to be on my deathbed and look back on and be like, I did that, and those are the ones you start with. And it can be a lofty goal. It can be a small goal. It's really up to everyone to decide what level they want to place the goal at. But if it is a lofty goal that's going to take possibly years to achieve, that's when you break that down into easier steps. But you don't do that just for accountability and action taking. You also do that so you know at what levels to celebrate yourself. Because something, I'm sure you remember this of me teaching this, is that once you achieve a goal, it's exciting for a few minutes, yeah, but it opens up so many other possibilities of new goals. So you're already going to be dreaming of the next thing by the time you reach it. And a lot of people don't realize this. Like, once you start down the path and you start realizing how powerful you are and how much you can achieve, your dreams start just coming out of the woodworks, and you can have millions of dreams all floating around you at once. So it's so important for us to stop and acknowledge how far we've come. And every time we hit a goal, to truly celebrate that, because that keeps us in connection with our goals. And it also gives us dopamine hits, which are really important along goal setting. Because if you're not feeling fulfilled at any point, especially if it's a long-term goal that's like way out there, you have to give yourself these moments of bliss, of reward, and know that even the smallest step should be celebrated, because that's the whole purpose, right? Like, your life is not just a matter of getting things done. It's also a matter of experience. And so the power of decisions in all of that that's one of them. Setting that intention of, my life's going to mean something, and it's going to mean something deeper than just productivity. It's going to mean something deeper than a status or a money amount, right? It's going to be an actual movement, and I'm going to really participate in life. And then the next decision is to decide not to allow doubt, not to allow past failures to interrupt your productive flow of new dreams, new intentions. And then you have to decide that those thoughts that say, oh, I can't do it, are no longer allowed. And in that moment, move that thought and keep going with, oh no, but this would be fun, because what if this happened and then that happened and then that happened, and allowing yourself to go with that flow. And then of course, the next decision is which goals are really worth your time. And then what smaller steps can you break down for those goals, and how can you reward yourself during those goals? And so goal setting is such a big part of spiritual awakening, and it's such a big part of being an artist, because the artist part we love, because we get to unleash, we get to let go. It doesn't matter what anyone thinks when we're in the mode of creation. But once it comes to producing or getting your name out there or marketing, like all of those require a different level of being, but it can still be a creative process, but it does have to have more of a grounded energy, whereas creation is more of a higher free flow energy of what comes in. It's taking all that and grounding it down to, okay, now I need to, have it produced. I need to have it edited. I need to hire this person. I need to, start putting it out on social media. So let me learn how to break those down. So each decision that you make along the path is in relation to what your objective is in that moment, whether it's to let yourself free think, make goals, make plans, or to simply try something new. So I know it's a long-winded answer for goal setting, but
I think it's really great. And it actually brings me to what I wanted to ask next, and that's about quantum leaping. So as far as I see it, I see like quantum leaping kind of as like a big potential energy, and kind of like where you could be if you like really believe and you like follow through. But we'll get more into like the action taking after that. But just a little bit about like what quantum leaping is, and kind of like how it can relate to people like setting goals like right now or like in the new year.
yeah, quantum leaping, I'm glad that you gave me your definition of it, because I realize that a lot of people have different definitions of quantum leaping. And to me, it's about timelines. It's about, like, it could take you 10 years to get somewhere, but instead you're choosing to get there in 2. And so it is fast action. It is a lot of change. And I will say that I don't think quantum leaping is always appropriate for every single endeavor. I really don't. I think some things we're meant to enjoy slowly and to really embody every layer of the process. And then sometimes with quantum leaping, we're actually blocked from being able to quantum leap fully. Like an aerials is a great example. I've been quantum leaping somewhat, with performance, and I performed only a month after beginning my journey, and I just had my last performance, last weekend. So I definitely quantum leaped there, but I also can only quantum leap so far because my body has to catch up. Like my brain's like, oh, let's try this move and that move, and I can do this. But then my body's like, yeah, but you don't have the discipline yet of stretching in that way, or the strength to pull yourself up in that way. So I can't quickly always quantum leap. So that's when it comes to creations, that's always something to ask yourself is this something I want to move fast on, or is this something I want to move slowly on? But it is definitely possible to quantum leap. And a large part of quantum leaping is your thoughts. It's the way you perceive your work, the way you perceive the outcome of it. It's someone who's like, maybe I can do this, versus someone who's like, I'm going to do this. And that really changes everything. And I think if with any kind of quantum leap, it is starting with that belief. Belief and perception can change so many things on our journey and with how our work comes to be in this world. And I think every person should start there of, what do I really believe about myself? Do I believe that I'm capable? Do I believe that I'm unstoppable? Do I believe that this could help people? And allowing yourself to play in that world will get you to move faster, and it'll get you to take action faster, because you're not attached to all these doubts and worries and what ifs. And so quantum leaping, again, if it's something like, oh, I want to have a bestseller book for, millions and millions of people in 1 year, it's like, that's great. You can definitely do that, but you have to make sure that you physically prepare yourself, because quantum leaping comes with responsibility. Like, let's say you do have that happen. And now it's like, who's producing your books? Who's your production manager? Who's your marketing strategist? Are you doing a book tour? Do you have time to do a book tour? Like, are you having a baby in your family? Maybe you don't have time to do a book tour, so it's keeping those things in mind that every time we reach a new level, it does come with responsibilities. So that's why I always put out like a little warning with quantum leaping, because it's not always it's not always the best route to go, but it can definitely, I would say, quantum leaping internally first with what you believe to be yourself and what you believe your higher self is definitely the start of that.
Yeah, and something you said like about self-belief in quantum leaping, it makes me it like reminds me of, I think one time you were talking about the reticulating activating system. How is it? What is it?
The reticular activating system. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's when you notice something and then you see it all the time, and how there's actually like this process in the brain that when you identify as like a certain thing, like if you say like, oh, I'm something, and then like you start like picking up all that information that has to do with that, and it's like the same process, and how so much of quantum leaping, like you learn so fast because you're telling yourself that that's who you are.
Oh yeah, it's a very, very powerful tool that you can use. It's yeah, like if you're like, I am an unstoppable writer, or like let's say, because I know a lot of your audience are writers
Mm.
and poets. If you're like, I am one of the best writers that have ever came to this planet, and you're not even comparing it to anyone, you're just saying that as a fact, you know, your brain will start to look at ways to which that's true, because your brain is so programmable. Like we have that power, and this is part of decision making, right? Like we have that power to decide. But if you have, you know, years of false beliefs that your brain has all this evidence on, like you're like, I'm a loser, and so your brain looks for that evidence. Like, yeah, remember when, you know, you've tripped and fell this day? Remember when you wrote that thing and it flatlined, or whatever it is? Your brain's going to just validate whatever it is that you tell it to. And that's why it's so important that we remain conscious during you know, our thought processes, and we remain intentional. Like intention is everything, and being present with every thought and realizing that you're the conductor of the thoughts, not the opposite way. That's a huge way to quantum leap. Because yeah, if I say, how, just in case no one knows, your audience does not know, the reticular activating system is basically a way for your nervous system to identify what's important and what's not important. So you're always filtering out information, because otherwise it's overload. So if I say, you know, everything yellow in your house is now important, your reticular activating system has now been activated to the color yellow. So you're going to start just noticing every little spot that has yellow, because your brain's like, oh, this is what we're looking for. So you would be doing the same thing, but just with yourself, of like, I'm an amazing person. I'm a wonderful friend. You know, I'm a beautiful human. I'm kind. I'm generous. I'm creative. You know, whatever it is that you're working on cultivating, you have to keep reminding the brain and keep activating that reticular activating system to whatever it is that you want to see more of. And that's the beginning of that internal quantum leap, because that internal quantum leap is what changes everything around you.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And also, it's something that we might not really notice or like be consciously aware of. But when we like hear it like that, it's something that like becomes conscious, and like you can reverse engineer it. So like if you have self-limiting beliefs, like you can work on it. Like your beliefs aren't always going to be like that. And I think like just a reminder that like there's so much hope in these things is so important, because I think there's a lot of like misinformation, especially like in like spiritual channels, where people kind of feel like, oh, like if you don't believe in yourself, like that's it, like like it's over.
You either got it or you don't.
Yeah, yeah, but like it's not like that. And I think it's so important that it's really about like focusing your energy where you believe you can make a difference, and like what you feel you're called to do. And I think like working with you, it's really like it helped me so much in kind of like that like negative spiral loop where you can kind of get stuck in like, oh, like this must be off, or like this isn't right yet. And like so much of what you taught me is that like the power of decisions. And something that was really powerful for me was when I was working with you, and you said, you asked me like, where do I have joy in my life? And you gave me the 30-day joy challenge to just like do 5 to 10 minutes of something that brought me joy each day. And I realized that I had like this block that like I couldn't find joy in things that I felt were temporary, because of like my own like life, that I felt like there were so many things blocking me, that like was attached to things that were temporary. And like I kind of internalized that as like, oh, I can't like find joy in it. And like the example that I think it like got so far to the point that I felt like I couldn't enjoy like having flowers because I felt like they would die and like then I wouldn't be happy. So like getting flowers it was such a big step for me. And I like learned so much from it. I did a workshop with like my friends. We started a women's empowerment group and we did a workshop on it. And like it brought joy to like so many other people. And I just think about how like it was just like it was something I almost said in passing. And like you really like you got it and you like stuck to it. And like you really like helped me work through that. And I think so many times people don't have the courage to bring up something like just like in passing with someone. And I think it's those things that really make a difference. So like I think like your attention to detail is just so beautiful. So thank you for that experience. And also I want to ask you about inspired action. So I think this is something that a lot of creatives really need to hear about inspired action. That like personally was a moment of realization for me when I heard you talk about it.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing again about that. Cause I remember that time frame and I was like, you can't get yourself flowers. What? Like you're getting flowers. Yeah, because we all have these weird little things that we don't always know why that the block was created or where, or sometimes it feels like you can't move these things. And I feel like it is actually tied into inspired action, really is. Because even that joy, and that is part of your reticular activating system of like seeking joy. What could bring me joy? And then training yourself. And people don't realize that just like we train a muscle, sometimes you have to train an emotion. Because if you don't experience a lot of happiness, it's going to feel foreign to you. Like if you have not smiled in a year, the muscles on your face are literally going to hurt the first few times you do it. They have to rebuild that momentum. And so when you're consciously trying to decide to embody a new emotion in your life, it is the beginning steps are seeking it, seeking experiencing it and trying to bring it into your reality no matter what. And it is very foreign at first. Like you said, like I'm sure at first, the first few days, you're like, oh,
yeah. I got joy from it. And I was like in like utter shock because like I didn't feel like joy from anything temporary, maybe in like 4 or 5 years. And I remember just being so shocked in the moment that I actually took a picture like because I was just like wanted to like remember that like there's so much that can happen beyond what we perceive. And that like if you never said that to me, I wouldn't have experienced that moment. And like just thinking about how I took the step to kind of like get coaching from you, that was like for me it felt like inspired action because like every post you had just felt so activating and just like so much like that unlocking effect. And I like think to myself like if I didn't like have the courage to do that, because I remember I was like apprehensive because I was like self-stigmatizing myself. And I felt like maybe I couldn't go to coaching because I was also in therapy. And I think for me, like talking to you, that like it's not a replacement for therapy, but like you can go to coaching even if like you are in therapy. And for me, that like was so like it seemed so big and like it was just so activating. And like I think I had so much like unblocking at the time that like I think like I wasn't even consciously aware of. And like you said, like not everything happens like immediately, like sometimes you're still learning lessons. And I actually just looked back at my notebook and like so many of the things that I like wanted to do, like I did. And like I didn't do it from a place of lack. Like I did it from a place where like I knew my why. And I think like that's something that's switched because a lot of like the things I achieved in my life came from a place of I had to prove someone wrong. And like working with you, it really came from this place like I'm doing this because it matters to me and I want to make a difference for the type of person that I feel like was in the same space that I was in when I felt hopeless. And it like really switched everything. And like that, like the idea of inspired action, I remember thinking, oh yeah, like it's not something outside of our control. Like it's something that like we have a decision, and then we like have to decide to take action on it. And I remember thinking like, it's not just about like writing a book. Like it's like you choose every day to sit down and write, and like it's a decision, and like that action is something that like is inspired in you because it's important to you.
I love that. I feel like our whole talk so far has been leading up to how to take inspired action, because we, it really has. And you hit on, there's two different viewpoints or two different areas of inspired action. There's the habituals, what are you doing day to day? What are your routines? And then there's the unexpected. And I want to touch on both of those. One, the first thing I want to say with inspired action, which we've already tapped into, is intentions. Intentions are the most powerful. Your intentions and your why, it is the most powerful. And it doesn't sound like it would be. And that's why I think a lot of people skip those steps. It's like, in school, I don't know if you remember this, but remember when the teachers would give you this assignment, they're like, it's really important that you follow directions. And the first thing would be like to don't, or write your name, but in a weird way, or be something like that, just to see if you'll read everything and follow every direction. And most people would skip the very first one because humans do, they want to jump ahead. It's like quantum leaping. Like we're like, oh, I want to get up here. But the foundation is the most important thing you could ever do for any project, any objective, anything, is to set that intention and to really anchor it in. And inspired action relies on this. Like even me, for my business, my intention has always been to help people awaken themselves. And it's so funny, the words that you used of unlocking, and getting people into a space that they never saw themselves in has always been my intention. And every action that I've taken has not always been like, oh, today I'm going to write something and it's going to truly connect with someone. Sometimes it's just that I have to write this, but that intention I initially set is what's setting off the momentum of the whole chain reaction. And so starting with that intention of like, what are you doing and why, you don't even realize sometimes that you're making the right decisions after that. And that's part of the beauty of inspired action, is whenever it's really inspired, it's not even in, it is in your control, but it's also not. It's like the grace meeting you halfway. And so with your reticular activating system, you're validating yourself. You're always working on emotions that are needed for the mixture of whatever it is you're creating, like whether it's confidence, joy, inspiration. You're working on those things. When you feed that, the inspired action becomes natural. Because let's say someone is saying that they want to produce or write a book, but they don't believe in themselves. And every time they sit down, they just like write one sentence, they edit it, they delete it, they write another one, they hate it, they delete it, because they're in this mode of I can't do it. And that because they believe that, it's like the universe is giving them that, like, okay, then you can't do it because this is what you believe, this is the state of mind you're in. And it's really hard to get action out. It's really hard to get things done in that state. And so you have to feed that inner desire of, no, I'm great at this. And I write pages every day. Like, I'm so great at this. I love this. It makes me feel alive. And when you're feeding that part, your brain's like, I wonder how I can get this out. How can I get more people to see it? How can I do this? Because you're in that state. So inspired action is honestly coming is as a result of what's happening internally. That belief in yourself is making that action happen. So that's the part of you that is not technically controlled. It's the part that's more of the divine grace of, hey, wouldn't this be a great idea? Which taps into intuition. Inspired action is listening to your intuition and being able to recognize that voice against the egoic voice of trying to protect you. And so trusting that intuition is a big part of inspired action. But now on the other side, the parts that are in your control is what we were just talking about, the habituals of you saying, I'm going to write a page a day. That's a decision, and that's a habit. And there's this little saying that you never rise to the occasion, you fall to your systems. And it's so true. It's like we might have these glorious days where we achieve more than we thought possible and we really put effort and work into it. But most days we're going to fall to our systems, So, and a good example, which is totally not related, but it's a good example, is dishes, right? Like, I hate doing dishes, and I always hated doing dishes. And I was raised to not use the washing, the dishwasher, which I still don't. because it was like, you don't really need to unless you're having like a big dish or like a lot of people coming over. And so I would let my dishes stack up and it would drive me crazy. And then I'd have these days where I'm like, I'm invincible and I'm going to clean my whole house. And I clean all my dishes. But it was just exhausting because I'd have so many at once. And those days were not every day. And so finally, I had to establish a system of like, okay, every single day, I have to get my dishes done every day. It doesn't matter if I feel like it or not, I just get it done. And then that eventually grew into a habit of every dish I have gets cleaned the moment it's done, you know? And so now it's like, I don't even have dishes at the end of the day. And so now I don't deal with that issue anymore. And I think for people, it's so important for them to set these standards in place and understand that eventually it becomes natural to you to do it. It might be not at first. And so the inspired action is a mixture of you setting the standard of what's going to happen no matter what, and then following through. And that could be a discipline and a practice, because if you're not used to it, you might not be able to do it at first. And then the other half is going to be listening to your intuition, feeding the desire underneath with flames of, your thoughts and how you feel about yourself, and trusting that the universe is going to meet you halfway with these actions. So I guess that would be a really long-winded tie-in of what I feel inspired action is.
Yeah, and I think it's so important because so many times we feel like we're not in control of our days. Like our days get control of us, and that there's certain things we have to do. And sometimes we only accomplish what we have to do, kind of like you said, like falling to our systems. And so much of kind of like creating, like if you're not happy with what you're creating or the amount you're creating, like ask yourself, like, is it like a pressure from outside of yourself, and like really this is like the way you want to create and this is like the amount you want to create? Or is it that like you think somehow creation is like somehow like beyond your ability to decide for yourself? And like kind of like stepping into like our own power. Like I think for me, I had to like hold myself accountable as a writer, and for that I like committed to writing like one poem every Monday for a year. And like that commitment was so strong that like one day I woke up on a Monday and I said, I'm not writing a poem. Like I literally said, I'm not writing a poem today. And I went to the computer and did it because like literally the commitment was stronger than my daily decision. And like I think so many times people don't talk about like intention, and like my intention when I set that at the beginning of the year was so much more powerful than like me just feeling like I can't write a poem on like a random Monday. And I think so many times we don't realize, specifically like creators and writers and authors, like we don't realize how much control we actually have over what we do. Like there's so much outside of our control. Like we can't, like especially with marketing, like there's certain things you can do, certain things you can't do. But like when it comes to like actually writing, like that's something that we all can decide for ourselves, like what feels right to us. And like if we miss a day, like how are you going to like make that right with yourself? And there's something that I heard you say once, and it like always comes to mind, that your soul knows if you don't finish. And like I literally, like I remember there were so many projects that I had started and didn't finish. And like just like for you to kind of like validate that, like that impacted how I showed up to like everything I was writing, like that really changed my perspective. And like I started to notice that like every time I did something and like followed through, like my energy changed.
Mm-hmm. You start trusting yourself more. And this is actually, I actually love that you're bringing this up, because I think this is really important. There's so many juices in here that we can digest. One is that it's important to start off slow. And especially if we're going to talk about New Year's resolutions with people, especially if someone's not used to setting systems and standards. And I know you, and I know you're really good at this. Like you're good at saying like, this is what I'm going to do and doing it. And I know I've had a lot of creator friends who are the complete opposite, who really struggle with that grounded energy because they're more up in the higher chakras of creation, of inspiration, and being like, I just want to see what flows through. And it can be very hard to ground that energy into, this is what we're getting done. We're going to set a goal. We're going to put it out in the world. And I would say to start slow because, yeah, when you commit to yourself, it's so important that you follow through. And it's not just about whatever project you have, it's because you committed to yourself. And that's why I think being slow to make those commitments are really important. Like it has to have a really strong why and a really strong intention. Because I don't think that all projects are meant to be completed in a way. Like, and this depends on what it is, of course, because I create all sorts of things. I have a bunch of unfinished paintings in my room that I don't really want to finish. There's no desire, there's no light for me, but I have other things that are extremely important that I finish that I've committed to. Like this is something because I have a deep why. Like this is something I really want to see happen. And so when it is a big commitment like that and setting it to where it's not going to be completely unattainable, right? If you're like, I'm going to write for 5 hours a day, like that might not be obtainable, like that could actually be very difficult. And you don't want to disappoint yourself because that can hurt your confidence. But setting something that is doable and it fits the time frame when you feel the most creative and it's something that you can complete and feel good about at the end of the day, like I did that, is really important. And also to know that anytime we work a muscle like creativity, it grows, right? Because I think a lot of writers and artists feel like they can only do it when the inspiration strikes. Like, oh, I have to wait for this divine moment where I feel inspired. But often it comes the moment you start writing and you sit down and start actually doing it, it'll start flowing through. And the more you're used to tapping into that, even when you don't feel like tapping into it, when you feel the opposite of it, that bridge becomes stronger. It's easier to snap into the creative mode because you've practiced it so many times. And so, yeah, I think that's a really great thing to bring up. It's like, yeah, your soul knows when you don't finish things that you've committed to, and it changes you because the more things you do, is set out to do and complete, the more confidence you have, and that unlocks new doors. And that's what I was saying in the beginning. It's like the more you hit these goals, the more it opens up what else is possible. And that's why we always have to stop and celebrate each one because the climb's just going to keep on going. That mountaintop's never really going to be here. We're always going to want to reach for more. So yeah, it's very powerful.
Yeah, and something you just reminded me of is the myth that you only have so much inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like you really like dispelled that for me. I don't remember which course it was in. I think it was probably in Spiritgram, but you said don't worry about feeling like you won't have inspiration for every post because the inspiration will come, and the more you follow your inspiration, the more you get of it. And I like have asked questions to people on Twitter before, and I said like, how many of you have an idea, and then like as you're in the middle of one idea, like 5 more come, and it's like if you're not working, like you won't have any ideas, but like the more you like work towards something, the more ideas flow to you. And I'd love to just hear like a little bit more about like that.
Yeah, so it's basically playing in a different realm of what's potentials inside of us, right? Like I almost kind of view it as like we have these bubbles inside of us that we can activate at any given time, right? There's a part of us that's been hurt. There's a part of us that we don't fully trust. There's a part of us that is lit up. There's a part that's creative and inspired, and we get to choose the thoughts and emotions for the most part. Sometimes when we're meant to face something, they just come on their own. But when we decide to choose thoughts and emotions that activate these different parts of us, it grows. And so inspiration is definitely one of those. Like we can live in a state of constant inspiration and creativity. And that's basically, I guess, how I live. Like that's the life that I want. I feel most alive when I'm creating, whether that be in my spiritual business and I'm writing a blog or a post or creating a video, or I'm doing aerials and I'm creating a new routine and I'm flowing to music, or my dollhouse and I'm building this massive dollhouse that is just so fun to me. And I mean, me making this dollhouse, I have like 5 more dollhouses in my head, like just sitting there. And I'm like, which one am I going to play with? And so, yeah, you get to live in a constant state of that if that's what you choose. And the more you delight in it when it does come around, the more you're telling your reticular activating system and you're training yourself to seek more of that. And so the potential is endless. And then it comes down to the why, because eventually you have so many creative opportunities before you, that you can take any avenue, that then it comes down to the decision making of which one is worth it. Which one do I really, really want? And it can be between multiple things that you really, really want. And that's a great place to be, compared to like where you might start off, where you're like, I don't know if I have good ideas. I have one that I kind of like, and letting yourself just keep going down that rabbit hole to eventually be in a place where it's like you love every idea that you have and you don't know how you're going to make it happen because you're a human and you only have so much time. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful place as a creator to find yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear more about your spiritual evolution throughout the years, kind of like what brought you to the work you do now. What does art mean to you in terms of like how you've evolved over the years and things like that?
Yeah. So my own spiritual journey has been very unique. I think very, unorthodox in a way. I grew up, I was very, very spiritual child, and I could see a lot of things that other people couldn't see. I have a synesthesia, and I also have visual snow, which are both psychological conditions that allow me to see letters and numbers as colors. And I see a variety of things that aren't possible. So as a child, I knew that I perceived the world very differently, and I accepted that pretty early on. Like I didn't feel like I was crazy. I didn't feel like it had to make sense to anyone else, and I was very okay with being different. And so in the church, I grew up in a Christian church and I absolutely loved it. I really thrived growing my relationship with God and spirit. But I did feel intuitively like that was not the end all be all for me, that was just one way for me to get to know God. And as I got older, I had a lot of questions that made some people angry at the church. I was like really pushing those buttons. And it started pushing me kind of away from the Christian structure. And I wanted to find my own ways. So my life's been an ebb and flow of me trusting that gut. And I think that's a big part of inspired action, is learning to go against the grain, or learning to go against what seems the most rational choice into the one that feels the most exciting. And so, I traveled around the country with gypsies and I ended up, picking many careers. I went to school for nursing, and then I became a tattoo artist. Then I started a mural company, and then I wanted to be a traveling photographer. So I became a traveling photographer, and I traveled the country again. Then I moved to LA for film. And I mean, my physical and my spiritual journey have always been mixed together, because I feel like anything I do, I wanted it to be something that felt good for me. Like I would rather have creative inspiration versus just physical success. And that for me was my intention from a very young age. And so every career decision I made was to feed that flame of inspiration inside of me. And the beauty of it is it landed me to where I'm at now with my spiritual business, but every single skill I picked up along the way has added to it. The photography has helped me when it comes to content making. The film has helped me when it comes to video editing. The customer service jobs help me when I do customer service in my business. The spreadsheets that I make, these are all tools that, because I trusted myself and followed those intuitive pulls, I now have those skills. So I guess my spiritual journey has been a constant awakening of kind of like me. Half of it's me trying to decide what I'm doing with my life and then taking those actions. But the other half is like the universe already had a plan for me. And I'm just kind of like I'm reading the story, like a story was already written of my life. And I'm just this beautiful part of it where I get to watch it from the inside. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, actually, so I really connect with that on a deep level, because when I started writing poetry, I wanted to like develop these like values that were like from the fruits of the spirit from Catholicism. So like joy, kindness, and there's actually a verse in the Bible, and it's like about like it says all the things like kind of like that people normally see as like sins, and then it says like, or like against like the laws of the church, and then it says what's above the law, and it's kindness, joy, and things like that. And that's what actually my poetry is about. And I feature poets on Summation 52, my poetry platform, and it's it's always like interfaith, and like a big part of like what I feel like that like platform really is. And I feel like my platform is that like it's not really about like kind of like, I think kind of like falling into hypocrisy. It's about like really like believing in like those things that are like beyond religion, and even beyond even beyond humanity, like just stuff that like is deeper and that connects us all no matter what our differences are. So like that really spoke to me, just kind of like there's no person on earth that can tell us how to live and what's right. And I think that's why it's so important you talk about inspired action, because like I do believe we are guided by the divine, and I believe like specifically with like our gut instinct, like it's so important. Even like I did an Unbeatable Mind program with, it's like Mark Divine from the Navy SEALs, and he says like our gut instinct is like how we like follow our courage, and like to like interrupt our fear loops and like follow that courage. And like I just like see so much of like kind of like this self-development space, like so much of it is like intertwined, and even with like spirituality, like it's intertwined. And kind of like the idea of like courage like superseding like judgment is just like so important to me.
I think it's a big thing is connecting the bridge between the practical and the spiritual, is that they are meant to be together. And I think that's a big part of, as writers, as creators, that we're doing really is we're making the impractical practical. And it's a mystical journey in between. It really is. And, even if people are learning inspired action and they're learning how to, set intention, goals, all of those things, that's all a part of their spiritual process and their journey. So even though, yeah, it does lead to a physical outcome, a physical result, the process is always going to be more important than the outcome. So I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been
Thank
great.
you. I'm so glad. I hope that people really like lean into a lot of these practical tips. So like partializing your goals and like your dreams, making it like the impossible possible, because it is. And even like showing up for yourself, like utilize these techniques. One thing I do want to bring up, so this helped me a lot with confidence, is you probably don't even remember saying this. It was so long ago, but you said if you feel like you don't have like a style, like you don't know like how to show up, you said you can decide to have like a style. And you said like you said like step by steps how to do it, like go on Pinterest and like look at like pictures you like and pin them, and then like decide to like buy clothes that look like that. And like you said, like you don't have to like go outside of your budget, like you can find like clothes like that are at like good prices that look like that. And like it seems so simple, but that actually really helped me with confidence, like specifically like showing up on video. Like I like felt like I didn't know how I wanted to like the clothes I wanted to wear and stuff like that. And that really helped me, like going on Pinterest. And also I think it was Boss Babe, they have I think I've seen you post some stuff from Boss Babe before. And they say basically like if you want to do like photo shoots, like save it on Pinterest, and then like you do the exact same photo. And like it's like seems something that like that people wouldn't do, but like it's actually like a technique. And
Mhm.
like I think so I do have a Pinterest, and like a lot of it is like for these like visualization techniques that like are so powerful. Like you don't have to like reinvent the wheel. Like there's like inspiration out there that like you can really
Mhm.
like tap into.
Oh, I love that. It's so funny because I still use that technique today. I still do it for myself. Like when I was learning how to design my house or decorate it, and I'm like, what do I want? And I was just like, what am I pulled to? And just letting myself pick out the ones that I'm pulled to, and then just deciding, like, okay, well, this is the look that we're going for. Yeah, it's crazy what we can do when we just decide. And that's part of it. Like, this gets to be easy. Everything gets to be easy. Anything we've made complicated. And it's usually just sitting with it. Right. It's like the intention. It's like going back to everything we said, the intention. Why am I doing this? For that, it'd be like, oh, I want to feel like myself in my clothes. I want to feel like I'm presenting myself in a way that's accurate to who I am, and I want to feel sexy. I want to feel colorful, or whatever the words are. And then you just let yourself without, and this is part of like writing down your dreams. You let yourself, without reservation, just pick the things that come out to you. You don't need to organize it yet. You don't need to criticize if it's worth your time or not. You just pick out the ones that feel good to you. And then you can sit with that and notice that there's a pattern. Like, oh, like I have like 10 goals that are all around my fitness, or you could, with Pinterest, be like, I have, 10 sweaters, big sweaters. Like, so obviously I'm getting pulled to sweaters, and that just kind of helps you start to understand what you like and what you don't like. And then once you figure that out, you get to choose what you like more than not, because now you're like, oh, I like that. And then now you have a vibe going, or a style going, or a photo shoot going. And so it does get to be simple. And I think that's the beauty of the coaching industry and the self-help industry. It's like, we get to have beautiful lives, and there's enough room for everyone to have a beautiful life. There's enough room for everybody to share their gifts and their dreams and to make an impact, because it's like we impact each other, right? It's not like one person impacts everyone else and now they've used up all the impact. We get to impact one another. We can impact the people that impact us. It all goes around. So no, this has been beautiful. Thank you so much. I absolutely love talking to you, and I'm so excited about your show.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on.